think we'll just get right into this interview. How are you doing, first and foremost?
So far, so good. Although there's a joke about that. The guy falls off the top of the Empire State Building, and as he's on his way down at the 20th floor, somebody says, "How you doing?" He says, "So far, so good." So you never know.
So, with all the changes this year going back, have you guys gone back to school in person yet?
Well, the school has, but they allow you to do Zoom instead if you want. And I prefer Zoom, not so much because of the COVID, but because everyone has to wear a mask. And when you wear a mask, you really can't, deaf people can lip read beautifully, but we all lip read a little bit. If I start talking like this, I won't say half of what I say is gone, but a bit of what I say is gone. And whereas right now, I can see you, you can see me, we can lip read each other. And also you can record the thing. Whereas if you go in there and it's just masks, well, you sort of lose communication. It's true you have more camaraderie, but, I try to get my students introduced to each other. At the first day, I ask them to tell me what their hobbies are. In case different students have the same hobby, they can link up together, become friends. So my ideal is first the old way, in person, no masks before COVID, then Zoom, and then face-to-face with masks. I think that's not very educational.
Well, it violates trust too. So we're somewhat descended from British culture, which is a very trust-based society.
I'm sorry, what violates trust?
The masks, hiding your face in Western culture tends to denote a lack of trust with people.
Makes you look like you're about to rob a bank.
Yeah,
well, I never thought of that. That's new to me, so I thank you for it. But I don't really see that as a matter of trust. All the kids are forced to do it. The professors are forced to do it. Again, if I start lecturing like this with a mask on, the students aren't going to get as much out of it as assuming I have something to give, this way where they can see me.
Oh, well, Liam's stepping away. Nice to meet you, Walter Block. I am deeply honored. Definitely have watched a few of your talks and some of your debates. It's always funny to see the neoclassicals and the pure Austrians go head to head on the value of empiricism and economics and things of that nature. It's interesting, if not a little bit above my head and my knowledge, but it's always a joy to watch you, and it's even more of a joy to meet you finally.
Well, thanks. You're very kind.
So I'd like to talk about more on COVID, especially teaching as a professor at in New Orleans. Has that affected your interaction with your students, especially when it comes to politics and when it comes to your work? I know you base a lot of your class off of your students' work at the end of the quarter and what they write. Has that affected the type of views you see coming from your students with the echo chambers online? Has that affected the different types of ideologies you've seen? Obviously, there's a lot of Marxists and what we like to call tankies sort of popping up through the pandemic. Have you kind of just seen more leftists as an effect from echo chamber?
Well, I have seen more complaints, student complaints, like use the word Oriental or say attaboy or attagirl, which, when I was your age, attaboy and attagirl was perfectly acceptable. And there are Oriental restaurants with the name Oriental. And yet somehow if you mention that, this is a problem. And I once mentioned the cotton industry, and I was severely rebuked by my administrators, the provost, for using an example from the cotton industry, for goodness sakes. So I have noticed an uptick in complaints, and it's also been correlated with COVID. It's just been the last 2 or 3 years that this has occurred. And I don't know if the one caused the other. What is it? Constant conjunction doesn't necessarily mean causation. On the other hand, constant conjunction is a hint that maybe there is causation, and maybe people are just getting more snarky and less willing to live and let live than they were before. I really don't know. I haven't thought that much about it, what the cause of it is. I don't know. There's a lot of snowflakes out there that, you say one word wrong and they go berserk. And it's, in my personal experience, it's been much more the last 2 or 3 years than any other time in my teaching career.
Yeah, my grandmother is a professor of sociology. She's a radical, critical theorist, feminist, kind of second wave feminist, and even she has been in a position where she's been brought in front of boards and committees for her inappropriate usage of misgendering and things of that nature. And she's like what happened? I started most of the violence against women shelters, and now I'm the bad guy. And I just always find that funny how radically this Marxist philosophy has taken over the institutions, much less so in economics, I'm sure, than humanities.
Less in economics, much more in sociology, where critical race theory runs rampant. I used to think the Chinese people were crazy because they had a cultural revolution, and it couldn't happen here. But we're having a cultural revolution. It's true. Happily, nobody's being killed. Whereas in China, they killed a massive number of people. But still, it's
no one's being killed yet.
Well, so far, so good. But nobody's been killed over this yet, and hopefully no one ever will be killed by this. But, now the Chinese are being more rational, and this pox, this intellectual pox is now infecting us. And, not only do we have COVID, which infects our bodies, but we have a critical race theory, which infects our minds.
So, Walter, you talked about how students have become more soft in the last couple of years and how they tend to take offense to a lot of things. The first thing that came to my mind was the petition to get you fired. I forgot. It was like the.
I hate to say it, but this is why we need more objectivists
of some sort. I forgot the name of it, but it had I think 100 signatures to get you fired for saying that I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said. No college should be obligated to accept a blind student into that university because they may have to utilize extra resources. However, right, if a blind student is not being accepted universities in an economy that incentivizes universities to specialize in this sort of thing and find the market niche and create a university for blind for deaf people. Is that the first time something that extreme has happened to you?
Well, maybe I missed one. There were so many attempts to
I just switched us to just chatting since we're doing a charity stream.
The one I'm aware of is not having to do with blind or deaf people, but rather with slavery. And what happened is they got 500 signatures saying block favors slavery, and slavery is evil, and therefore I should be fired. And they got 500 signatures, but then a former student of mine got 6,000 signatures saying block is great, he should get a raise and all. And somehow
Anton Chamberlain, I believe.
That's right. Anton Chamberlain was my former student, and he managed to get 6,000 or so, maybe 5,800, something like that, on the other side. What happened was the New York Times did an interview with me in 2015. And I didn't know what it was. They just said they want to know what this libertarianism is all about. So I said, fine. And what I didn't know was that this was an attempted hit piece at Rand Paul, not Ron Paul, Rand Paul. Why Rand Paul? Because in 2016, Rand Paul was running for office and he was a viable candidate and they wanted to get him. And the way they were going to get him is to say, Rand Paul hangs out with a bunch of nuts, and I was one of the nuts. And there were 10 or 12 nuts that they interviewed, and they showed that we're all crazy, and therefore Rand Paul is crazy. So I was doing the interview, trying to explain libertarianism to them, and either they weren't getting it because they were stupid, which I don't think is true, or they weren't getting it because they want to keep pushing me, and I don't mind being pushed. So I finally gave them a very radical version of libertarianism, something controversial among libertarians, namely voluntary slavery. So what's voluntary slavery? Well, my son, who I love very much, let's say, God forbid, has a horrible disease. And the only way to cure him is $20 million. That'll cure them. And I don't have anything like 20 million, but you four, you each have 5 million to spare. You're all very rich, and you'd love to have me as your slave. And, I'll teach you economics, pick cotton, or whatever you guys want. And so we make a deal. You give me the 20 million, I give it to my son's doctors. I benefit because I value my son's life more than my freedom. You benefit because you value my servitude to you more than the 20 million. As in the case, all voluntary trades ex ante are mutually beneficial. Ex post, who knows, we might regret it, whatever. But ex ante, this is a voluntary trade mutually beneficial. So now the question is this legitimate? And I gave, Murray Rothbard disagrees, and Robert Nozick agrees, and I gave both sides on this.
He's just spamming his
Discord. That was the end of the interview. 3 months later, they published a thing, and you know what they said? They didn't say I favored voluntary slavery. They said I favored actual slavery. Actual slavery? For a libertarian? Come on, give me a break. The whole essence of libertarianism is non-aggression. And coercive slavery is the epitome of aggression. So I certainly didn't favor that. And then what happened was that the president of my university, Father Kevin Wilds, wrote an article in the Maroon, the student newspaper, saying, well, we're against slavery and Block is a bum because he favors. Come on, I don't favor actual slavery. I'm making a very technical, philosophical point about voluntary slavery, which is the diametric opposite, 180 degrees different. So around 2017, some young lady got hold of this and said that, we ought to fire Block because he favors slavery. And by the way, to finish the story, I did sue the New York Times for libel, even though we libertarians oppose libel laws, but, I concocted some reason why I could do it. They're part of the ruling class, and ordinary things don't apply to ruling class. And I settled on grounds that I'm not supposed to say, but they were satisfactory to me. So I did sue them, and I did win. I won something that satisfied me, and that's the story. So I don't know, but this was before COVID. This was 2015. And maybe late 2015 or early 2016.
So I think, I'm sorry. I think we have a question from Jeff, and I'm also going to admit Ben, my good friend Ben, who you know him, Walter. He's been a part of our interviews a couple of times. So we have a question from Jeff, and then we'll go on to additional questions from Scott and Mark. And I will be right back.
Sure. All right. Hey, Dr. Block. I was wondering.
All right.
Oh, hey.
Please call me Walter. We're all just chickens here.
Sounds great, Walter. So, I really like your Defending the Undefendable books.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. They're very interesting, very fun. I have a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rob, in the state. It's an unfortunate choice of
several
words,
libertarians,
especially when talking to the New York Times.
A good, satisfactory answer for myself. It has to do with COVID and all of the regulations. So, let's say a store has, there's a mask mandate, like they just started in California again, and person believes that that's wrong. State shouldn't be able to force this, and so they go into a store without a mask. I have some libertarians who say that's a violation of private property rights because the store is saying, no, you can't go in here. I have other libertarians who are saying, no, that's coming down from the government, so it doesn't count. My question to you is, who is the undefendable who needs to be defended? Is it the person who is standing up to the government, or is it the store owner? I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure about who's the defender or who I should be defending. And by the way, I now have 3 books, Defending 1, 2, and 3 out, and I'm working on number 4. So
nice.
If you like, there's number 1. But there's also number 2 and 3. But wait, let me see if I can flash these in front of you.
you are interested in purchasing any of them, they're available at Mises.org, the Mises.org book sale, or bookstore rather. And they're actually having a holiday promotion. If you put in, I believe, Hoppa Holidays, they have a promotion for about 15% off.
You already showed one. Here is 2 and 3. I don't know if you can see them.
Very nice, very nice.
Okay. I'm a professor. I'm never supposed to answer questions directly, so let me answer this indirectly. I wrote an article in the Journal of Libertarian Studies, which I regard as the preeminent libertarian scholarly journal. And I pretty much attacked everybody. And who's everybody? Well, there's either the hawks or the doves. And the hawks are people say, COVID is horrible, it's going to kill us all, and the government is not only entitled to make us wear masks, but even entitled to make us take a shot against our will. Sort of the Typhoid Mary thing. Typhoid Mary spread typhoid. She was innocent. She lacked mens rea. She wasn't doing it on purpose, but she was spreading typhoid, and typhoid is a very deadly disease. And what should we do with her? Well, not put her in jail, but house arrest, and feed her and keep her comfortable. So the hawks think that it's a horrible disease, and the government is justified in not only masks but compulsory vaccinations. And there is a case for that because if I sneeze and you guys are on the Pacific Coast and you get typhoid or COVID, I'm a murderer. I shouldn't be sneezing. Given
disavow.
That's true. So those are the hawks. And then there are the doves. And the doves say, look, elderly people like me, I'm 80 years old, we're in danger. You guys, you look like you're in your early 20s, late teens, somewhere in there. It's not going to affect you. And even me, it's just like the flu. And it's no big deal. And the government has no right. It's unconstitutional. Yak, yak, yak. And I attack both. And what I say is, look, I believe in specialization and division of labor. I'm an economist, and I have, credentials as a libertarian theorist. And that's it. I don't know about epidemiology. I'm not a doctor. I don't know about the spread of disease. I don't know how serious it is. Again, each side is speaking as if they know what they're doing. And I'm saying, let's have a little modesty here. We don't know. And I wrote this 2 years ago, or I forget, maybe 18 months ago. We now know a little bit more than we knew then. On the other hand, I'm sort of, if I had to pick between the hawks and the doves, I would pick dove, because the burden of proof is on anyone who is going to use violence against anyone. And if you're going to have compulsory masks or compulsory vaccinations, you have to have some sort of burden of proof. Have they met any burden of proof? No. They keep talking about the science, but to me, science is an open-ended thing. And instead, what they do, they threaten doctors who disagree with the hawk version, or who are doves. They threaten to take their medical licenses away. And epidemiologists, they threaten, maybe not kill them, no killing, but they threaten their livelihoods. So they've come nowhere near proving anything. But does that mean that they could still be right? Right? As far as I know, again, I'm an economist and a libertarian theoretician, say, I don't know about epidemiology. So I think a little modesty is required here, and we shouldn't be we shouldn't be tying libertarianism to anything like this, because we don't know for sure. Okay, now with that preliminary, let me try to get to your question. In my view, if the government compels the store owner to require masks for entry, what do they have that expression? No shirt, no shoes, no service. Well, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. It's his property. It's true he's being compelled, but it's his rule. So therefore, I take the side of the person, a libertarian who comes into somebody else's store and starts without a mask, and the owner wants a mask. He's a trespasser. So I think that's very clear.
So I have a question regarding your work. Through the pandemic, you've put out a lot of articles. You worked on your book, Space Capitalism. How many scholarly articles have you put out in the past year?
I don't know. Usually around 20 a year or so.
So
I'm up to about 650. I'm trying to get maybe 640. I haven't looked recently. Maybe 660 for all I know. I'm trying to get to 1,000. I don't think I'll make it, but I'm gonna try. That would be a nice round number.
So with all the work that you've been putting out and all the appearances you've been making on shows, I mean, this is the best one, obviously. Have you ever thought about making your own podcast or doing your own sort of show?
I've thought about it. The problem is, if I do it, I'll probably get canceled. Because, I say things that are libertarian or Austrian economics, and the powers that be, don't like that. I'm hoping Donald Trump is now starting a new platform, I think. He's got Nunes, Congressman Nunes, to leave the Congress and head this up. And if he makes a success of this, like Parler didn't and Gab didn't, if he makes a success of this, then I'd be more inclined to have a podcast. On the other hand, Bob Murphy has one, and Tom Woods has one. And there can be no better two people than Bob Murphy and Tom Woods. So if they could do it, I could do it, because, the three of us are, very similar in our viewpoints. So I would contemplate it, but I'm right now I'm busy. I'm working at Loyola University. You can see the background there.
Thank you,
and
regular guy.
I'm writing, and I've got enough to do. And every once in a while, people like you guys invite me, and I do an interview or a speech. I just debated David Friedman the other day on Austrianism versus Chicagoism. So I do that 2 or 3 times a week. Well, maybe 10 times a month, I'm not sure. So I get out there on the airwaves without my own show.
I wouldn't be as worried as you might think, Doctor. Well, you said call you Walter. I guarantee you, I have said spicier things on Twitch than you would say on a pretty regular basis. You'll get shadow banned, but that's not the same thing as getting blocked outright. I think you'd be surprised.
Well, I'm not going to use the F word or the N word or the C word or, anything like that. But, the ideas, voluntary slavery, the idea that women earn less money than men and it's not due to discrimination.
I would push back on that a little. I wouldn't call it voluntary slavery, because maybe that's where you messed up talking to the New York Times, because slavery by definition wouldn't be voluntary, right? I think you could have avoided so much if you just said indentured servitude.
But it's not indentured servitude. It's absolutely not indentured servitude. You're not allowed to kill your indentured servant. Whereas in voluntary slavery, remember I sold myself to you?
Mm-hmm.
You could kill me. You could maybe not torture me. It depends upon what the contract is, but you can certainly kill me. This is not indentured servitude. This is voluntary slavery.
Would this be similar to like gladiators during Rome? There were some gladiators who were voluntarily there.
Apparently he's legit for voluntary slavery.
Something called the Domus or something like that, and they got trained alongside the slave gladiators as well and could die there.
Yeah, one of my articles, I concocted this thing called
Holy
Murder
shit,
Park.
abort.
Murder Park. I should have called it Killing Park, but I called it Murder Park. And the idea is you got 20-foot thick walls, and everyone goes in there armed with a gun and 6 bullets, and you're allowed to shoot anyone else. Except every 50 minutes we ring a bell, and then you have to stop shooting, and we cart out the dead bodies, and we replenish the ammunition, and we bring in new people, and now everyone shoots.
I fucking love it.
Is this legitimate? Well, yeah. It's a little weird, but namely, we're trying to show the extent of what libertarianism is all about, and what it's all about is voluntary interaction. And if people want to do this, what the heck? Oh, sadomasochism. So I have to tell you my SM joke.
Disavow. Just for the record, disavow. I don't think you can get rid of private property rights, and the right of self-ownership is private property. I don't think you can ever fully give that up, even in a contract. I don't know. I think that would be against natural law philosophy.
Well, there is a debate among libertarians as to whether voluntary slavery is legitimate or not, and you've got Murray Rothbard who says no, because you can't alienate the will.
Mhm.
And my answer is will schmill. I don't care about the will. I just care about, are you guys murderers if you kill me? And the answer is no, in my view. You're not murderers because I sold myself to you and knowing, that you could kill me. So it's very different than, indentured servitude. I have to tell you my SM joke. The masochist says to the sadist, beat me.
The sadist says no.
No.
Do you believe Squid Game could be a real thing?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you believe Squid Game?
This is going to be an
a real
amazing clip.
I don't know what Squid Game is.
The
So
Netflix
is this,
show.
It's a newer TV show where essentially 456 poor gambling addicted people are chosen, and they sign a contract, and they're drugged, and they're taken to like a secret facility on an island, and they're all playing child games like red light, green light. But the thing is, if you lose, you die. So they're competing for $30 million, but only 1 out of 456 will survive. And they're voluntarily doing so. They can leave at any time.
Look, anything voluntary is the motto of libertarianism, and you can concoct weird things that are voluntary. But that's to stretch what libertarianism is all about. Well, not anything voluntary. There are exceptions. You can't sell a square circle.
Fair
Some
enough.
Impossibilities. Yes, impossibilities are impossible and thus could never exist in our system.
So I'm currently
Right.
torn.
I
I'm
agree.
currently torn between farming the memes for YouTube and continuing to talk about voluntary slavery, or ask you a question that I honestly, genuinely wanted to hear your answer on. And so, pardon me for all of those enjoying the memes for me pivoting for just a moment, but I want to know what you believe, what you think, and maybe you've already spoken about this and I've simply missed it. I can't be aware of everyone's, body of work. But how do you feel about synthetic commodity currency as a comparison to fiat currency and traditional commodity currency?
Well, the way I see it, Milton Friedman had this TV series, which was very, very good, and it was called Free to Choose. And my view is we should have money that people are free to choose. And whenever they were free to choose, they pretty much chose gold and maybe sometimes silver. So I don't favor the gold standard, because if people were free to choose now, if we got rid of the central bank and got rid of fiat currency, and instead of gold, it became platinum or silver, that would be fine. Whatever free market money is chosen is fine with me. So at the top of the list is the gold standard, understood that it could be gold, platinum, silver, whatever. The second, I think, would be these electronic currencies. Why? Because it's non-governmental. And the third would be fiat currency that we now have. $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill, inflation based on the Fed and all that. The problem with gold is that, the government forbade it. And then the problem with electronic currencies, you need electric. If the electricity goes out, we don't have any money.
But I'm specifically talking about synthetic commodity currency, right?
For example?
So, I mean, technically speaking, Bitcoin is a synthetic commodity currency, right? Because because of the Dogecoin kind of specific, there is an absolute amount, right? Which makes it very much like a commodity currency. Well, technically it is, right? But the idea is that in the future, we would be able to take things like Bitcoin or Ethereum or other blockchain coins, right? And put in them algorithms that could, in many ways, match things that the Federal Reserve is already doing, right? Monetary policy via algorithms that determine how much money is in the supply, right? So let's say it could be tied to a basket of market goods. When a basket of market goods drops below a certain rate. So what the idea is that you write currency with algorithms that compete against commodity currencies, and then when the market has certain dips or ups, certain amounts of the money can be artificially put into the system. The idea is that it has an absolute amount of future currency that will be available, and theoretically could be more stable than commodity currency, right? Because that kind of goes up and down with the market, and in kind of a relative opposite faction. But unlike fiat currency, the government can print as much money as it wants, and so you have a consistent level of inflation as opposed to, a more stable currency or deflation, and you have market manipulation and regulatory capture and corruption and bonds and all these other things that are kind of tied and enmeshed with the state.
Well, in my view, asking which of the currencies or the bitcoins or the commodities could be money is sort of like asking, what should we have for dinner? Should we have fish? Should we have chicken? How about spaghetti? Anything voluntary. And I have no strong views. Now, look, we know that bananas aren't going to be a good money because they get rotten too quickly. And we know that diamonds are not going to be a good money because when you make change in diamonds, you lose most of the value of it. And it's very hard to break a diamond, whereas it's easier to break gold because gold is a softer metal. But suppose somebody wanted to try diamonds or I don't know, cement as a money.
Thanks for the follow, Sir Jiggly
no,
Wiggly.
anything voluntary. Now, as an economist, I'm going to predict perhaps that the bananas aren't going to make a good money, nor is cement going to make a good money. And maybe I'm not familiar with many iterations of Bitcoin, but I would just say, like with Uncle Mao, let 1,000 flowers bloom and let the market compete, and we'll see which money we get.
Fair enough.
I promised you guys 5:45 to 6:15, so I got 2 more minutes. Maybe one last question, if my timing is right.
Yep, it's if anyone has anything else, you can just throw it in.
I was thinking pushing the boundaries of libertarianism. So, Hunger Games. The government kidnaps children, puts them into an arena they have to fight to the death. Could parents have control over children? Could the parents voluntarily sign them up to go into an arena and try to kill each other?
He's only got 2 minutes, Wellspring.
I think we ought to kill the people in charge of doing that because they're evil. I don't think the parents should sign up kids to become gladiators.
I agree.
Wellspring,
that's just
relax.
a horrible thing to have.
This is not your show.
Anything. Look, compulsory masks aren't as bad as compulsory gladiators where you can die. We have to be reasonable here. I mean, we don't like compulsory masks, but what the heck? But the compulsory gladiators is, really vicious and evil.
Well, that's true, but we're pushing it to the limits of voluntary. So could parents voluntarily sign their children up for a death game?
No, they can voluntarily sign themselves up.
They're custodians of their children's rights.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying that they would be custodians of their children's rights. Their children still have rights as well.
Any parent that signs his kid up for that loses his guardianship rights because the role of a guardian is to protect the kid. And if you engage in child abuse, you lose your right as a guardian.
Lightning round. How do you feel about Elon Musk?
Well, in what's the expression? The little girl with the curl. When she was good, she was awfully good. When she was bad, she was horrid. Elon Musk is a little like that. And in my book on space, I think we had a whole chapter on Elon Musk and a few of the other people like that. He's very good in the sense that he orchestrated such that you could reuse rockets. Imagine if you took a trip from New Orleans to San Francisco and you had to throw away the plane after you took that trip. Do you know how expensive air travel would be? Well, that's the way that NASA was doing with rocket ships. They use it once and that's it. And Elon Musk came up with a way of, determining that you could reuse it.
Because
so in this chapter, go ahead, Ben. What were you going to say?
Because NASA's using our money and Elon's using his own money.
Minor detail, absolutely.
Sort of. Elon is using a lot of our money.
Well, that's exactly what we put in this chapter. Elon is getting a lot of subsidies from government. So we're asking, is he a good guy or a bad guy? And don't think that just because you get subsidies from the government, you're a bad guy. Because remember Ragnar Danishkold from Atlas Shrugged? He wasn't getting subsidies, he was taking subsidies. Look, the government is evil, and any money they have, you should grab. And if you grab, you're justified.
Sounds like LDS literature. Bleed the beast. Gotta bleed the beast.
I mean, Murray Rothbard used to say, look upon the government as a robber gang, and then all of the libertarian principles come through. So there's nothing wrong with getting a subsidy from government. Look, I get subsidies from government. I used to teach at the University of Central Arkansas, which was a government institution, and I took a salary. And, I go on the public streets, and Audubon Park is a beautiful park, and I use that park. So I get subsidies, nothing wrong with taking from government. The question, though, so just because Elon Musk took from the government doesn't mean that he's anti-libertarian. So what we did is we went over all of his speeches to try to see if he's favoring government or opposing government. And I think our consensus, I forget, but I think our consensus was he's not a libertarian because based on his speeches, he wasn't libertarian. Therefore, he'd be unjustified in taking money from government because he's part of government. He'd be part of the ruling class.
Fair enough.
Maybe his more recent speeches have been different. Look, guys, I got to go. I promised you a half hour, and I'm delighted to do it. And maybe in a month or two, we'll do it again. I really enjoy the back and forth with you guys.
Thank you so much, Walter.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks,
It was
Walter.
great having you on. Thank you, the mouse on Marie Rothbard's head. I hope you have a safe night, Walter, and thank you so much for coming on.
Is it time to spin that wheel?
Take care. It is time to spin the wheel, everyone.
Walter Sama.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.